Hello, good evening. It's almost 6 o'clock, so it's very late for me to be starting dinner. I usually start earlier than this, but we did a Goodwill run today for my daughter to get her clothes for the fall. And then we went to the library and they had a free craft cart. So we were there crafting for a while and then getting books, and so I'm just a little late. But I'm glad I had an easy dinner planned, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to make. I have this uncured turkey kielbasa that we really like. I'm going to dice this up. And I've got these pre-diced potatoes from Azure Standard. They are pre-cooked before they're frozen, or like par cooked. So they cook a lot faster than regular potatoes, but you could use regular potatoes and cut them up yourself. I've got some frozen corn, and then I have some ham bone broth that I made. These are each 2 cups. And I'm going to go ahead, they're still frozen, but they'll work. I can make do with that. And then I also have some heavy cream, so I'm going to make a corn chowder. There we go, that's the word. As well as probably some heavy cream biscuits. I need to use up that heavy cream now that I've opened it. So I'm going to find a few ways to use that up for dinner and take you along with me. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and cut up that turkey kielbasa into bite-sized pieces. My kielbasa now all chopped in my pot, and I just put in a little bit of olive oil, and I'm just going to saute it until they get a little bit of a crispy brown on them, and then I will take it out and I will make a roux and get going on the rest. Okay, I took my kielbasa out. I'm gonna go ahead and add in a couple tablespoons of butter. Let that melt around. It won't take too long. This pan's still pretty warm. That melts. And then to that, I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of flour to make a roux. Okay. And to that, I'm going to add in some seasonings. I've got some minced roasted organic garlic. This is from Azure Standard. You could use fresh garlic. I just was on a pinch for time, so I'm going to use this. And then some minced onion, same thing. If I was not so pressed for time, I would cut up my own onions, but I just don't have time for that, so I'm going to use the minced. Then I've got some organic no salt seasoning. My kids are fighting, sorry. And I'm going to go ahead and put some of that in there. And I don't really measure my seasonings. My broth is pre-seasoned because I made it myself. Some organic black pepper. You could use white pepper if you wanted. And then I'm going to do the other seasonings in a little bit here. So I'm going to go ahead and just mix that all around. I'm going to let those seasonings get some good flavor, that flour cook out. And then I got about 4 cups of broth, and I may not need all of it. I don't want this to be too runny, so I'm going to start out with just adding about 2 cups and then go up to 4 if I need to. So just letting that cook out that flour taste. Alright, and so I've got my whisk here, and then I've got my broth that I went ahead and just defrosted. Excuse me, kids. Anyways, there's this white stuff is the fat from the broth. It's totally fine, or you could skim it off. I'm just leaving it in there. It will melt out. It's still kind of frozen. I know it looks kind of gross. If you don't have homemade broth, of course, you could just use Better Than Bouillon, which I could have used. But I had this ham broth, and I thought this would be a good way to use it. You could also use jarred or canned or boxed broth, whichever you prefer. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep adding in a little bit at a time and stirring it up. That is about 2 cups. So I'm just going to leave that as it is for right now. Actually I need to add in a little bit more now that I looked at my measuring. Okay, there we go. So I've added in about 2 cups. I started out with 4, added in about 2 cups, and I'm going to go ahead and just get this all mixed together, and then I'm going to start adding in the rest of my stuff. Turn the heat up a little bit. All right, I'm going to add back in my kielbasa that I took out earlier. Just trying not to get a splash all over me. Okay. My kielbasa back in there. Switch back to my other utensil here. Okay. So my kielbasa is back in there. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in my frozen corn. And I've got a 2-cup measuring here, so I'm going to do 2 cups of frozen corn. I get it from Azure Standard in a big 5-pound box, and then I just put it into Ziploc bags in my freezer. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the same thing, 2 cups of the frozen diced organic potatoes, again, also from Azure Standard, and I want to say these also came in like a 5-pound box, and they're super great for quick meals like this. So since they're already partially cooked, won't take as long, but you could certainly dice up your own fresh potatoes if you had the time. I was going for quick and easy. That all mixed together, and then I'm going to add in a bay leaf while it's cooking, just to get some of that flavor. And then I'm going to add in some parsley flakes, and I'll add in probably a little more at the end, but add some in now to cook in there with it. And then I'm just going to put the lid on and I'm going to let it simmer away. I'm going to keep an eye on the broth level. If it's getting too low and my potatoes are absorbing it or not cooking well enough, then I will add some more. But you don't want it to be too runny because you are going to be adding in some heavy cream, which was going to add some liquid to it. So it's better to be a little conservative in the liquid. You can always add in more if you need to. So that's that. I'm going to go ahead and just put the lid on it, and I'm going to let it simmer. I'm going to turn it down just a smidgen. This pot gets pretty hot and things will cook to the bottom. So turn it down a little, let it cook for about 10 minutes, and I will check on it. And while that's going, I'm going to clean up this mess and start making my biscuits. While my soup is cooking, I'm going to keep stirring it. I'm going to go ahead and make my biscuits. This is a recipe that I made up, and my family loved it. It's not the best biscuits ever. They were fluffy and got that little bit of a crust on the outside and flaky and leery and so delicious. So I'm going to share the recipe with you too. Let's do it. All right, hope this is going to be set up and okay for you to see. So to my bowl, I'm going to add 1 cup of regular flour. This is Sunrise Heritage flour. I order it from a local flour mill, but they do ship to all the states. It's really great flour. It's heritage, it's organic. People with gluten sensitivities can often eat it, kind of like an einkorn type of situation. And the way that they mill it just makes it more easily digestible. It's less processed, so we really like it. I've got 1 cup of just their traditional flour there. And then I also have their whole wheat pastry flour, and I'm gonna do 1 cup of this. If you didn't have wheat pastry flour, you could just go ahead and use 2 cups of regular flour. I'm sure that would work just fine, but I like this wheat pastry flour. Gives it kind of a prettier golden color to it. Okay, so a cup of that, and then I need 1.5 tablespoons of baking powder, and I really like this baking powder. It's the aluminum free. So 1 tablespoon and 1/2 tablespoon, or 1.5 teaspoon. My ring is sensing there's motion outside. Okay, and then I'm going to do 1 tablespoon of white sugar. You could use whatever sugar you like. This is like organic cane sugar. So 1 tablespoon of that. These are super easy biscuits. Just can't get much easier. Okay. Whisk it together. Perfect. Now the next thing, oops, I need to grab a knife because I need to cut my butter. Just a second. Okay, so I'm going to cut this into small cubes, and I'm using 4 tablespoons of butter. I get this one from Azure Standard. It's really good. It's European butter. But you want it in small pieces because you're going to be cutting it into the biscuit mix. It's easier to do if the pieces are smaller. Okay. And I'm just going to cut this in. The next thing I'm going to do is add in 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. And just stir it all together. Use my cat. Just until the dough forms. If it's still a little too crumbly in pieces, you can always add more. But you're going to work it on the counter a little bit into layers, so it's okay if it's not perfect. You're going to roll it out and stuff, so it'll mix in a little more too, because the butter will melt a teeny bit while you're working it. Add a splash more. But you just want to add a teeny bit at a time, otherwise you're going to end up with it too wet. Okay, so it's very crumbly. I'm going to clean up the counter and get ready to roll this out. I'm going to roll it out into a rectangle, then I'm going to fold it like you would a letter, roll it out, do it again, roll it out, and then I'm going to cut it into my biscuits. Pan here, and I'm just going to put my biscuits on there. You can cut them anywhere between 9 and 12. And the reason why I cut off the edges of the big triangle or rectangle was because that way they rise more evenly. So I did that and put them on my pan, and I'm going to bake them at 425 for 12 to 15 minutes. All right, my soup is done. And I'm going to go ahead and add in some of the heavy cream. The amount is really up to you, depends on how creamy you want it. I would say up to a cup would be good. And then just stir it in to get it all mixed together, and then just let it simmer again for just a few minutes just to come back up to temperature since you put that cold heavy cream in there. So I'm going to let that go while my biscuits finish, and I'm melting butter to brush the top of my biscuits with when they come out of the oven.